Hey guys, it's Max. Blackmagic just announced some new products, and one of those is the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro. So yesterday they sent me out an email saying they're going to have a live stream, or maybe a few days ago, and there might be some new camera news. What I was really hoping for is like a new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, because those were extremely popular, but that's kind of like the oldest device that they still have, and they haven't updated. They're still selling it for the same price, and it'd be awesome to have a 4K version of that, or maybe even one slightly larger. I think that'd be a really great seller. But once I watched through majority of the live stream at the end, they announced the Ursa Mini Pro, and I think this is going to be a really great selling camera. So I have here on my computer a screen capture, so we'll be going through and showing you guys some of this stuff. I'll just cover kind of the main points. So as you guys see, it still looks similar, same body as the previous camera, but they've added more functionality, more slots, and a lot more dials and buttons and controls. So let's go ahead and scroll down here. Some shooting examples, and one thing that they kind of mentioned is it's basically like the previous camera, but now it could be used for broadcast use, where you need to have more controls. You need to be recording things quickly instead of like a film shoot where you have a lot of time to dial everything in before you shoot. So now they have, you guys see here, there's three Ursas. They have the 4K, the 4.6K, and then the Ursa Mini Pro. Now the Pro only comes in the 4.6K model, and they changed the microphone recording, and I think the quality of the XLR, they improved that. And here on the sides, one thing that sticks out is they have NDs added, internal NDs. So there's a clear one, completely clear, a 2, a 4, and a 6 stop. So that is very impressive, and that's a huge kind of drawback of the previous Ursa camera is people would use their own ND filters, and then the sensor was very susceptible to IR pollution. So then you'd have to use either an IR cut filter or try to get rid of the magenta cast when you're editing, and then it wasn't even, so it was very difficult. And I think that was the biggest complaint. A lot of people returned their Ursa Mini 4.6Ks because of that. Now they're saying these ND filters are very high quality, and they're going to do really well in this regard because they're designed for this camera. So that's so nice to be able to have built-in NDs when you're out shooting, to be able to flip through those and not to worry. And that's going to solve, one of the biggest issues with the Ursa 4.6K. So there's the built-in ND filters. You guys see there's a little dial kind of towards the front of the camera, and they show an example here. Clear, totally blown out, 2 stops, a little bit of difference. We have a good exposure here, and 6 stops. Here's a side shot of the camera, and we have all these dials on the side here. So they added way more controls, and previously if you had the screen closed, you couldn't change very much settings. So now they added a manual on-off switch. You have this scroll wheel, so you can adjust your headphone volume, change your iris, and you have ISO, shutter, white balance, function buttons, a record button right here, changes for the channels for your XLRs. And then you have this little black and white screen on the side, and it gives you a ton of information. So really easily at a glance, you can see your levels, your battery, the FPS that you're shooting, ISO, iris, white balance, what card you're using, time code. So very nice to have just all your settings at a quick glance to see that. So you have your metering right here on the outside now instead of on the inside. So really nice to be able to use out in the field. It's going to improve the usability. And what they mentioned is they kind of listened to all the people that complained about the previous, the Ursa 4.6K, and they took all that feedback and they tried to implement it. So now you can change the mounts as well. So they are kind of stepping up, going into more like red territory. And I was surprised by how inexpensive these mounts were. If you look at a Red or something like that, they really, really charge you with high profit margins, where there's no prices listed here, but they're all reasonable. $150, $250, $350, I think, depending on which mount you want. But this is nice if you usually shoot an EF and then you're going to do a big job, you want to use PL, be able to get one of those mounts. An example of the side screen here. And this was really cool to see. If you guys have been on their website, you see the huge sensor heatsink, and you have a fan down here, this crazy huge heatsink, and then the heat coming out. So this is why these big cameras don't overheat, because they have really good cooling system. And this looks like it takes up most of the body for that heatsink. And of course we have 15 stops of dynamic range, really nice colors from this camera. So you have 4.68 up to 60, and one big addition, which I think is awesome, is now instead of just having two CFast cards, you also have SD cards. So there's two SD cards. Now you can use that as a backup, or you can actually shoot just to that. And they're using UHS 2, so you can get really fast cards. Like here, for example, they have 300 megabit per second. And while that won't get you to the highest quality, there's probably a couple things that you can't do, like if you're doing the highest uncompressed RAW, which you probably shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't want to do that, or high frame rates, you might not be able to, but the majority of what you can shoot on the camera, you'll be able to use SD cards, where these SD cards are about half the price to 1/3 of the price, depending on the speed. So you got to make sure the card can handle what settings you want to shoot, but it's going to save you some money being able to use these SD cards. Now, I don't think this front page mentions it, but they also talked about an SSD edition. So it's a plate that goes between the camera and then between the battery plate, and then it has the SDI inputs, so you can connect that, screw that in, and then use SSDs. So up to 2 terabytes, and if you're going to do a lot of recording, I can save some money compared to buying these, these cards, and have all your files on an SSD. Just plug it in and start editing. So a lot of people did they bought third-party accessories for about $600. There's some different options that are really kind of clunky. They sit on top of the camera. Some people made their own. So this is going to be a good quality option if you want to record a SSD, and it's not going to be overpriced, because that's what Blackmagic does. They don't just go crazy on the pricing. So here's a shot of all the different parts. Have these two little SD cards, and so they still have the same OLED viewfinder, which is really nice. They use the same new settings. They showed off the studio viewfinder if you're going to use it in a studio environment, and it also has external time code. So if you want to use a broadcast lens, they have this lens plug. So very, very nice, and definitely a huge improvement. And on top of that, let's go all the way down, see what else they showed off. So here you go, PL mount, $245. Now the biggest surprise to me was the price. I was expecting probably about $8,000, by being more competitive to like a FS7, but they only priced it, I think, at $1,000 more, or just under $1,000 more than the Ursa 4.6K. And honestly, I think it's a no-brainer if you're going to buy one of these, because you have so much more controls, the ease of use, the NDs that are built in. It's going to help with the IR pollution, better XLR inputs, as support for the SD cards. There's so much stuff that they added, and so much usability improvements, where it's no longer just kind of like a cinema camera, but like they mentioned, it's a broadcast camera now. So you can have a 2 or a 3-in-1 if you consider studio use. So I'm very impressed, and this is a camera that I've been considering buying. A couple things that kind of were drawbacks was the ease of use. If you're using in a situation where like you're doing some kind of a live recording or something like that, and the memory cards that were really expensive, and they have come down a little bit, the CFast 2 cards, but now the ability to use standard SD cards, that really helps push this camera and make it more usable and less expensive to use, especially if they come out with those SSDs when that gets released. So this camera is available now. I'll put a link in the video description in the comment section if you guys want to go check out the fine print and the specs and stuff like that on B&H. And if you guys purchase for that, it gives us a few pennies on the dollar. So let me know, what do you guys think about this? Is this something you're interested in? If you own an Ursa 4.6K, a Mini 4.6K, are you going to be trying to sell that and upgrade to this camera? So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.